It's 6 o'clock.
Welcome to the Oregon Village President Candidate Forum presented by OCA Media in partnership with the Oregon Observer. Our candidates tonight are Jerry Balling, a Village Board Trustee and Dane County District 31 Supervisor, Randy Glish, a Village Board Trustee and Chair of the Fire EMS District Commission, and Jenna Jacobson, a Village Board Trustee and Chair of the Village Personnel and Public Safety Committee. Our moderator for this evening will be Oregon Observer Editor Kimberly Wethel. Let's go live now to our Village President Candidate Forum, presented by OCA Media.
Welcome, and thank you to those who are joining us tonight to hear from your candidates for the Village of Oregon Board President. At a time when we are all burned out from Zoom meetings and virtual gatherings, I commend you on your dedication to local government and democracy. I especially thank the candidates for being here tonight to speak directly to Village of Oregon residents. We're pleased to host this forum on behalf of our residents, and we hope it will educate voters as they cast their primary and spring election ballots. We'll start by briefly discussing the format of tonight's forum. Each candidate will be allowed to deliver an opening statement. Oregon Observer staff have prepared the questions, and the number of those that we get through depends on how much time we have. The candidates have not been provided the questions, but we did give them a hint of what topics they would be talking about a few days ago. If there is time, we will also ask questions submitted by the public. We're scheduled for a 7:30 p.m. stop, but if there are lots of questions or the discussion is going well, we can stretch it by a few minutes. We'll reserve time for each candidate to make a closing statement. As I read off each question, we will start a timer that will be visible on the screen behind me. Please be respectful of everyone's time and abide by the principles of fairness by staying within the time limits. Each person will get 2 minutes to answer a question and 1 minute for a rebuttal. We ask that candidates show respect towards one another by not interrupting and by leaving your microphones muted until you are asked to speak for a question or a rebuttal opportunity. I will retain the right to mute any candidate if necessary, but hopefully that should not be an issue. The candidates in attendance are Jenna Jacobson, Randy Glish, and Jerry Balling, which is pronounced without an N, contrary to our opening. Jacobson, Glish, and Balling are all Village Board trustees. Balling is a lifelong Oregon resident and has been a part of the local government sphere for nearly 2 decades, including 9 years on the county board. Glish is a psychology professor with 33 years of community activism under his belt, and he joined the Village Board in September 2018 after they chose him from 6 candidates. And finally, Jacobson is a financial analyst in the Madison area and has served as a trustee for the board since 2017. Without further ado, let's begin. Each candidate will now answer their opening statement, and we'll start with Jenna Jacobson.
First off, I want to say thank you to the Oregon Observer and OCA Media for putting on this forum. I love the opportunity to get in front of people and talk about my vision for Oregon. My name is Jenna Jacobson. I've been a trustee in the village since 2017. I moved to the village in 2013 with my husband and family. As I've been on the board, I started out on the Personnel and Public Safety Committee and the Finance Committee, and have progressively grown in leadership and responsibility to be the chair of the Personnel and Public Safety Committee, as well as maintaining my roles on the Board of Review, and then adding onto that the Library Building Committee to help with the exciting library project that we have going on. I'm running because I'm passionate about the success of the Oregon community, and I find our future to be so bright, and I'm really excited for it. I think we have lots to do in the affordable housing space. I know we have 2 projects that we're currently working on, but we need to make sure that those projects come to completion. And so that's one of my top priorities, as well as bringing more affordable housing to the village, specifically senior housing and affordable housing for single families. I also am running to make sure that as we grow, we're growing sustainably. And I think a great example of that is the buildings that we have coming up, the library project, the senior center that we're looking to build in the next 5 years or so, making sure that they're sustainable, that we as the village are leaders in that front, that we're working to make sure that we're increasing our biking and walking paths, fixing the Rotary Trail, making sure that our community is friendly to all modes of transportation, not just vehicles. So thank you.
All right, if we could restart the clock, please. Randy, this is your opportunity to introduce yourself. We will give you 2 minutes to do your opening statement.
All right, very good. Thanks for having us tonight. Hopefully this will be fun for us. So I'm Randy Glish, and I have to say I'm having a great time actually campaigning for village president. That's one thing I told myself I wanted to have is to have some fun. So I've been a resident of the village since 2013. I was appointed as village trustee in 2018, re-elected again in 2019. I do serve as the chair of the Fire EMS District Commission. I am a member of the Personnel, Public Safety and Protection Committee. I'm the vice chair of the Historic Preservation, member of the Library Board, and I'm also on the School Resource Officer Subcommittee, and I'm a past member of the Coalition on Aging. I'm also a member of the Oregon Housing Coalition and past chair of the Oregon Community Resource Network. I have a master's degree in educational psychology, undergrad in psychology and human development. I grew up in Two Rivers, spent 8 years in the Navy. I'm retired from the state with 20 years as a research scientist. I've been teaching psychology courses at Madison College for over 15 years. And I'm a small business owner. I own Red Corner Art Class. Probably most known for my work on the restoration of the pump house and the Tin Man. Also been instrumental in the building of the new food pantry, the new youth center, and now as co-chair of the new library campaign. And with those projects, I've helped raise over $4.1 million for those projects. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you.
Thank you. And then we will get the clock reset here shortly, but then last but not least, we will have Jerry contribute his opening statement as soon as our timer is ready. You may proceed. Oh, you're on mute.
I am on mute. No, I'm not. Thank you, everyone. It's good to be here. As was indicated in the opening, I've been an Oregon resident, I grew up in the township on a dairy farm and moved into the village in 1965, and I've been here ever since. And I've been here ever since because I've always felt that Oregon is a wonderful place to live and raise a family. I attended and graduated from the Oregon school system. I earned my living as a governmental accountant at the Alliant Energy Center for 36 years, after which I retired. And I decided a long time ago that I wanted to be involved in local politics, so I ran for village board in the 90s. And I've been successful in 3 different times. And I was on the board from 95 to 97, 93, or 2003 to 2010, and 2012 to the current time. And while I've been on the village board, I was also vice president for, I believe, 7 terms. I've been chairman of all the major committees. I currently am chairman of Finance Committee, and this experience, the 19 years of experience, have allowed me to become familiar with all facets of the village operations, the village staff, and the village financial systems. And during that time, I've also been an elected member of the Dane County Board, serving as chairman of zoning and land regulation, a member of the Executive Committee, Airport Commission, Solid Waste Committee. Pardon?
If you could wrap up one last sentence, we are at time.
Okay, I'm running for village president because after 19 years on the village board, the next logical step in my village public service is to offer myself to the residents as candidate for village president.
Thank you, all three of you, for your opening statements. We will launch into the question portion of our forum. The first few questions will address topics that you have all raised during your time on the board or during this campaign. For this round, we will have each candidate answer the questions in a round robin format. For this first question, we will start with Randy Glish, who is well known in the Oregon community for his work raising money for community projects. The question is as follows. The village now has a new youth center and food pantry building. What are some of the other areas of need for the village over the next several years?
All right, very excellent question. So I'm going to jump right into the one that we're looking currently is a new village hall. And so we're sort of working on that at the moment. The other thing is the senior center is kind of patiently waiting for a new senior center. It's much smaller than they have capacity for. They need a bigger building, hopefully with some housing as part of the building as well. So the village hall, the senior center, obviously the new library, which I'm passionate about and am the co-chair of trying to raise the money. And by the way, we raised $2 million during the pandemic, which is phenomenal. So those are some of the more immediate, I think, things that we need sort of to take care of. And I'm very proud of doing the pump house and the Tin Man and the youth center and the food pantry. Those are all things that we need in the community and have been well received. So we have some things to still take care of, and we'll see how we can do that. If we might have to take one at a time slowly and see how we can pay for it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your answer. Jenna, you are next, and I will repeat the question for you. The village now has a new youth center and food pantry building. What are some other areas of need for the village over the next several years?
Thank you. So I'll start off with the library. We did just complete the fundraising portion of the library project, but we also need to finish that up and get that project moving to the next phase. I think of libraries as community centers, especially in our community, where you think of all the programming that's done there and how so many facets of our community use that building for educational purposes, for gatherings in non-pandemic times, for gatherings, and how it's such a important component of how this community operates and works and functions. So I think that's number one priority, is to get that library into the next phase. And then I think then we focus on the senior center, because we know that they're out of room. They can't really expand anymore in their current building. And our senior population is only going to grow. And so when we look at the senior center, I think that needs to be our next focus, our next area to prioritize. And I think we've talked a lot at the village about potentially doing some senior housing in combination with the senior center. And I think that's crucial, because we know from my time on the Housing Coalition that 47% of our seniors in this community are cost burdened, which means they're struggling to pay some of their regular bills each month, specifically related to housing. And so I think of it as, our seniors built this community, so we need to do everything that we can to make sure that if they want to stay here, they can. And I think some affordable senior housing in combination with the senior center needs to be our next priority after the library.
All right, thank you. And then Jerry, it is your turn, and I will repeat the question one more time. The village now has a new youth center and food pantry building. What are some other areas of need for the village over the next several years?
Thank you. I don't want to be redundant, but I'm going to say, we need to get the library kickstarted, and we also need a new senior center for the seniors, because they're the ones that have paid the bills over the years. And we also need some affordable senior housing. But I'll move on to some other things that there's a need for. We need to make sure the water is flowing through the village in a orderly manner to prevent flooding. And we need to get that bike trail above water. We need to continue our hiring and continue searching for a place to put a new business park. Our current business park is all built out. And if we don't do something soon, our business community will be stagnated. We need to do that also so we can prevent a spike in our property taxes. I could go into some of the projects right now, but I got a feeling that might be a question coming up in the future. But some of the more major projects that we have coming is the complete refurbishment of North Main Street, which I know a lot of people will welcome. I know there was a letter to the editor in the paper last week or the week before. And so that project will get started in 2020, followed by 2021, we'll be doing Janesville Street, a complete reconstruction. And during that time also, we're going to devote another $500,000 to roads in the village, other roads in the village. So our capital plan is full of road reconstruction. And I believe with that, I'm going to yield the rest of my time, but I don't have any.
All right. Well, I hope you are okay with talking, because this next question is for you. For this question, we will go to you because of your long tenure in local government. Mm-hmm. The question is as follows. The village will be hiring a new administrator in the next couple of months. How important is the working relationship between the village president and the administrator? And how might you approach it differently than your predecessors? You have 2 minutes on the clock.
That's a good question. The relationship is everything because those are two key positions. And the reason the president is so important when it comes to that issue is the president controls the agenda. The administrator controls the agenda of the employees. So I've been fortunate. I've been on the board 19 years now. I've served under 5 different presidents, and they were all fine. They were great. And they made it look easy. As a matter of fact, they were so good. So I would have to say that when we hire somebody, that would be one of the most critical areas that we'd have to investigate. How they would get along with not just the village president, but the whole village board. Because if those two functions aren't coordinated, the business of the village won't be seamless. It'll be very, very messy. So I believe I've answered that question, so I'll yield at this time.
Thank you. Randy, I will have you go next and I will reread the question for you.
Okay.
The village will be hiring a new administrator in the next couple of months. How important is the working relationship between the village president and the administrator? And how might you approach it differently than your predecessors?
So I think this is going to be a crucial time for the village, a big challenge. Mike Grace, who is our current village administrator, has been with the village 22 years. So we have somebody brand new coming in. And I believe that the characteristics of that person, they need to be a forward thinker. I mean, we need somebody that can have some creativity and think forward about how to solve problems. I see the village administrator as part of the team. The village board has to act like a team, and the village administrator has to be part of that team as well. We need to work together on the priorities that we set for the village, and the village administrator needs to be with us as part of that team to put those things forward. Just a couple of things. I think it's really important that the new village administrator, I said, be a forward thinker, but have some really good financial management background, be able to sort of manage staff effectively. And then I think the village administrator needs to be a team builder. The village administrator is also out in the public, and so it's important that they know how to deal with our residents, know what the issues are in the village, and work effectively with the board. Especially this time, we're going to have probably at least 3 vacancies on the village board in April. So it's going to be important, and to have a new village administrator. These are some big challenges for us and for the village president. Thanks.
Thank you for your answer. And then we will repeat this long question one more time for Jenna. The village will be hiring a new administrator in the next couple of months. How important is the working relationship between the village president and the administrator? And how might you approach it differently than your predecessors?
So I think the relationship between the village president and the administrator is key to the success of the village. The administrator they oversee the majority of the functions in our village currently, and they are generally the first phase that people experience when they are coming before us with different questions, concerns. If they're a developer and they want to bring a project to the village, if we're working with the school board, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes outside of the village board, trying to build relationships in the village and with our municipalities around that neighbor us. And so I think that the village president needs to rely and trust that person and their skills in doing that. And they also need to make sure that they're having open communication with this administrator and trusting their judgment, but also having tough conversations when that's necessary, if that's ever necessary, because that's how we work through everything, is just talking about it. Communication is the best way to work through most issues. When I think of how I would do something differently than our predecessors, that's a tough question, because I think so much of the relationship between the village president and the village administrator is developed not at the board level. And so I can't specifically speak to how I would do things differently, but I can tell you what I would personally do, and what I have been doing my time on the board is to have regular communication with the administrator, ask questions, make sure I'm understanding the issues at hand, and relying on their knowledge to help me find additional resources when I need them, as well as bringing back the resources that I've found on my own.
Thank you very much. And for the final question of this round, we will begin with Jenna, who is a trustee representative on the village's Diversity and Inclusion Council. The question is as follows. What should the village board's role be in ensuring the community's underrepresented groups are heard and their needs are met?
So I think the village board's main role is to lead by example. When we look at making an inclusive community, it's not just the village board, but the village board needs to lead on this issue. And I think we do that by making sure that we're listening to traditionally underrepresented groups, giving them opportunities to speak. I've made the comment before that you need to go to where people are at. You can't always expect them to come to you. And so finding those places out, finding out where we can go to hear these voices that may be uncomfortable coming before the board for various reasons that may or may not have anything to do with the board, but just thinking of the history of diversity and relations with traditionally underrepresented groups in our community, I think it's upon us as the people in power to seek out those voices, go to where they are and listen. And I think it's also important that we take the time to understand that we don't know everything on these topics. We will make mistakes, but if we keep learning, keep reaching out to the resources around us. I mean, we have a couple of great universities just down the road in downtown Madison that we can reach out to if we need to, if we have questions on some of these issues that maybe we don't have personal experience with. So I think reaching out and learning more, understanding that you're going to make mistakes, you're going to ask questions that maybe seem silly, but that's how we learn, that's how we move forward. And encouraging traditionally underrepresented people to get involved in local government, I think is the last way that we do it. Because the more we have that representation on the board, the better we're going to do as a community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jerry, you are next, and I will repeat the question for you.
Sure.
What should the village board's role be in ensuring the community's underrepresented groups are heard and their needs are met?
Thank you. When I heard that question, the first thing I thought of was multicultural competence. And that's probably a little bit of an overstatement, but basically what it means to me is the ability to communicate, understand, and interact with others who are culturally different. And I think we do that now in the village. We have very good department heads, and our department heads are trained in cultural diversity. And we've also got good frontline managers that are well versed in diversity and inclusion. So I think the best thing Oregon has in its favor is the fact that it's got a reputation as being a fine place to live and a fine place to work. And given that, I believe that we'll continue to integrate different ethnic groups into the community. And beyond that, there's not a whole lot you can do except in hiring. And when you advertise, you have to make sure you advertise that this position is open to all groups and all races when there is an opening. So I'll yield at this time.
Thank you. And then Randy will finish this off and I will repeat the question for you.
Thank you.
What should the village board's role be in ensuring the community's underrepresented groups are heard and their needs are met?
So one of the things I said in my intro is I'm an instructor at Madison College, and I teach a course called Human Relations. So my philosophy in life is that we're all human beings with differences, and that we need to celebrate those differences. Why can't we embrace differences? And I think it allows an opportunity for all of us to learn new things about others. I mean, when I was in the Navy, I got to go to all kinds of different cultures and learn, and it was wonderful. I think differences provide the opportunity to learn about each other. I want to be open to new ideas, and a simple thing is just listen. I think sometimes maybe underrepresented people are a little intimidated by elected officials. And so I do think that we have to seek them out and go to those groups and make the first move. I think one of the great opportunities that we have, because we know we're going to have at least 2 vacancies, is to make sure that we do whatever we can to get some unrepresented folks on the village board. So that's an opportunity for the new village president and the village board to do in the next couple months. But the big thing is to listen, and we have to reach out. We have to be the one to reach out and be open. Be open. Just because somebody has different ideas doesn't make it bad. So thank you.
Thank you. Jim has alerted me that I have not been offering it time for rebuttal. So I would like to open this moment right now. If anyone would like to offer a rebuttal to anything anyone else has said. If not, we will move on with the next round of questions.
Everybody's been perfect.
All right, if there is no rebuttals, I will move on. We are now in the second round, and the next questions will be about your vision for the village's future. For this question, we will start with Jenna Jacobson, who is a member of the Oregon Housing Coalition. The question is as follows. To help the Lakestone Properties affordable housing development get off the ground, the village board has agreed to spend $2.75 million in tax funding, the largest amount of money it has given to any single building project. In the future, how should the board prioritize affordable housing development opportunities?
I think from my perspective, when we look at affordable housing developments, we need to look at what the impact is going to be in our community. One of the things that makes me so excited about the Lakestone property development is that it's up to 150 units and over 3 buildings. 2 of those buildings are for or they'll be income restricted, but they're going to be open to everybody. And then there's going to be 1 building that is going to be entirely senior housing. And I think that is a great investment for our village. One of the things that sticks with me is when I first joined the board, we got an email from somebody who had mentioned to us that they were moving out of the village. A senior was moving out of the village because they could no longer afford to be in this community. And that really struck me. And I think about that email and that person a lot, and all the other people who didn't email us but are experiencing the same thing. So as I'm looking for how to spend village dollars on any project really, but specifically affordable housing, I want to see what the impact is, how it's going to benefit our current residents, and how it's going to build our community further and help the people that are already here. So I think that Lakestone project is a great example of it. I remember when we had the listening, I got 30 seconds. When we had the listening session, some of the folks on that property came to talk about their need for more affordable housing. And they were already living in housing that's what we call naturally affordable. It's just cheaper by the nature of having been there for a while. But they needed more affordable housing, and they were very interested in this project because it could fulfill that need. That to me makes an investment like this, an investment in our future, worth it.
Thank you. Randy, you are next to answer, and I will read this long question again. To help the Lakestone Properties affordable housing development get off the ground, the village board has agreed to spend $2.75 million in tax funding, the largest amount of money it has given to any building project. In the future, how should the board prioritize affordable housing development opportunities?
So I think my philosophy on this is very simple. I think anyone should have the opportunity to live in the village if they want to. And I know I have talked with some of our police officers and teachers who can't afford to live here. But so the affordable housing, or workforce housing, as it's also called, is crucial. Anybody should be able to live in the village. One of the things that I get constantly emails is from seniors who cannot live. They feel that they're going to be have to leave their house because they can't live here. So I think we have to look at the people who currently live here and who want to stay here. So we need to give them options. Sometimes in some of the affordable housing, you have different parts. You have where people can actually, maybe it's a 2-bedroom, and then maybe there's another affordable housing that's a 1-bedroom when they want to downsize, or families want to downsize, but they still want to stay in the village. We need to think about those things as well. And there's lots of different types of workforce housing. So we need to look at what are the needs of the current community members. And then, as I said before, we need to make sure that if people want to come here and live here, that they need to be offered that opportunity to do so. Thanks.
Thank you. And then Jerry, it is your turn to answer the question. I will reread the long question. To help the Lakestone Properties affordable housing development get off the ground, the village board has agreed to spend $2.75 million in tax funding, the largest amount of money it has given to any building project. In the future, how should the board prioritize affordable housing development opportunities?
Thank you. You know, 2.75 million sounds like a lot of money. And it is. It's an awful lot of money. But that will not cost the village residents 1 cent. And we'll have a beautiful project when it's done. It's a pay-go project. And what that means is when they pay their property taxes at the end of the year, we turn around, or the village turns around and applies that to the outstanding balance of that TIF, the tax incentive financing that we provided for the project. So again, that won't cost the village anything. So we can do any number of these projects as long as they're structured like that. And we always try to do them that way because there's, again, absolutely no risk to the village resident. However, you know, as much as we'd like to do these projects, and as much as we'd like to do more affordable housing projects, we're limited by the number of developers that will bring a project like this to the village. We're also limited by the sites. It's hard to find a site to put a project like this because, believe it or not, I know you'll believe this, but the neighborhood does not embrace these projects. You know, when they're used to living next to an open lot, they want to keep it an open lot. And there is resistance, but again, finding the developer is key. Finding the site is key. I think if we find those two things and we can structure it with the no impact to the residents, we can do more of these. And I hope we can. So thank you, and I'll yield.
And that is time. I would like to open the floor for a 1-minute rebuttal if anyone would like to do so. I'm going to take that as I have no rebuttals, and we will move on to the next question. The next question will start with Jerry, who has frequently emphasized the importance of fiscal responsibility. The question is as follows. The Village of Oregon, along with the rest of the world, has navigated this unprecedented health crisis that has resulted in economic troubles. But we might not yet have seen the full impact of COVID-19 on the village's finances. What does the village need to do during this next budget cycle to prevent the pandemic from disrupting village operations through the next few years?
Thank you. And that is an interesting question because I was watching the news tonight before this telecast, and I learned that we are experiencing the worst downturn in the economy in 74 years since the Great Depression. So I have a feeling that we still have a ways to go. And but what can we do? I think we continue, and we're fortunate that we have excellent village staff because we will continue to craft budgets, realistic budgets that spend and invest and borrow within the available revenues while providing for maintenance of existing services without spiking property taxes. And of course, this requires continuing monitoring during the year of your revenues and expenses. And then depending on where those are, you adjust. And that way you don't tax people out of their homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenna, you are next to answer this question, and I will reread for you. The Village of Oregon, along with the rest of the world, has navigated this unprecedented health crisis that has resulted in economic troubles. But we might not yet have seen the full impact on the village's finances. What does the village need to do during this next budget cycle to prevent the pandemic from disrupting village operations over the next couple of years?
So I think we've started off by making a realistic 2021 budget. We have reduced the mill rate, which is the percentage that helps to calculate your property taxes. It was reduced by 2%. So I think that was a nice start. But one of the things that I've learned with my time on the board is that we tend to feel these larger economic impacts at a little bit of a delay. So while 2021, we were able to make a budget that I think reduced the impact on our residents and maintain services, 2022 is going to be more of a challenge. And I think this is where we become more diligent in listening to not only our finance director, who's done an amazing job in helping navigate the financials during this pandemic, but also in hiring the administrator. I think this goes back to our administrator. The one, Mike's amazing. He's done a really great job in helping us with this budget. And I think as we look forward, that kind of expertise, working with the finance director, working with all the department heads to understand the limitations that we're going to be facing, is going to be crucial to making the budget for 2022. That being said, there's other things that we as the village can do to help maintain services. And I think we're doing some of that by allowing our village staff to work flexing some at home and some in person. That reduces the amount of people in our village to help keep more people safe. And I think it sets a good example for other employers in the village. I think also working on increasing accessibility for services, communication to the village hall, how people pay for things, get information from the village hall. All of those things are services that we've ramped up and gotten better at during this pandemic. And I think those will continue going forward. Those are some great lessons that we've learned that will continue and can help make our services even better in the future.
Thank you. That is time. Then last but not least, Randy, I will reread this question for you. Okay. The Village of Oregon, along with the rest of the world, has navigated this unprecedented health crisis that has resulted in economic troubles. But what we might not have seen yet is the full impact on the village's finances. What does the village need to do during this next budget cycle to prevent the pandemic from disrupting village operations in the next few years?
So I think our hiring of the next village administrator is so crucial to this question, because we are not dealing with the budget as village board members every day like they are. They're dealing with every piece of the budget. And so we need a very strong new village administrator with some good budget experience to sort of be our eyes on the budget and to let us know what is happening, how is the spending going, what things are not going as well as maybe we would want. I think we may have to prioritize some of our priorities. We may have to delay some things. We may have to get creative. We may have to repurpose like buildings or something to deal with that. We may have to look for things that what we did on our project is more public-private partnerships to get things done where we didn't have to spend as much village money. So I think things like that. I mean, we have a good bond rating, and it's important to all of us that we keep the village in good financial situation. I mean, we were able to just raise the taxes by $44 this past year, which is great. So we always have to sort of keep our eye on the budget and get creative, and we may have to delay some things if it doesn't look good, but there is going to be a lag. So thank you.
All right, I would like to offer a 1-minute rebuttal period for anyone who's interested.
I just want to give a shout out to the village staff again in this area. I learned this week that we received almost $200,000 back from the federal government in reimbursement for the PPP loans that the government issued during the past year. And we use those for our police protection over time. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to take a minute for rebuttal?
Can I just echo? I'll just echo, because one of the things I had on my list was grant writing, and that actually is related to what Jerry has said. Our great village staff was able to write some grants to get some of that money back. So, I mean, that may be another thing that we have to sort of look really more at, looking at grants to sort of help if things don't look as good as we anticipate.
Well said.
Jenna, would you like to offer a rebuttal?
No, I think they've done a good job of explaining the grant programs and government funding.
All right, then we'll move to our last question of this round. The final question will start with Randy, who is a member of the steering committee for the new library. The question is as follows. The pandemic has posed major financial hurdles for some of the village's major community projects, including the new library, which had to postpone its fundraising deadline by several months. What are some ways to ensure that the new library gets built, as well as eventually a new senior center and a new village hall?
So with the library, interesting, I said this earlier, that I, to be honest, am amazed that we were able to raise $2 million even during the pandemic. And I will say that even within the last couple of weeks, we've gotten some $20,000, $5,000. I'm working on a $50,000 donation. So even though it was during a pandemic, what we saw was that because that was tragic, people needed to do something positive, and they wanted to do something positive for the community. And so I think that's partly why we saw the increase in donations. Over 750 individual donors to the library. So what's going to happen? I believe it's going to be built. We're going to have another joint meeting, the library board and the village board, in a few weeks. I think we all understand that the library is an investment in our community. And we've raised the two. I think there'll be some more funds come in. If the village puts in a little bit more, I think we'll see more people come forward because they'll know it's going to be done. But I think most people in the village realize that this is really an investment in the village. And I'm here to tell you, we will do it. It will happen. Thanks.
Thank you. I will pass the question to Jenna next, and I will reread it for you. The pandemic has posed major financial hurdles for some of the village's community projects, including the new library, which had to postpone its fundraising deadline by several months. What are some ways to ensure that the new library gets built, as well as eventually a new senior center and village hall?
I think in order to ensure that the new library gets built, the village needs to evaluate their level of investment into the building. I probably wouldn't have said that a couple of years ago, but as we're looking to the future and we're looking at the needs of the community and the demands of the community, it is so important for this library to happen and happen in a way that we're not revisiting this decision in 20 years and asking ourselves, why are we already growing out of it? Is it not fitting our needs anymore? So I think I'm a proponent of the village reevaluating our level of investment and seeing if we can't do more. That might impact other projects though. I know we've already tasked one of our financial advisors that we partner with to reevaluate what different levels of investment could look like and how it would impact some of these future projects. Because as I mentioned previously, our seniors have been waiting patiently for so long, and they're also bursting at the seams at the senior center, and they deserve to have the ability to do their programming just as much as the library does. So we need to make sure that we're making the right investment. We're making it at the levels that will be appropriate for not only what the community needs now, but in the future. But we also need to make sure, whether it's with timing, whether it's with public-private partnerships or additional fundraising, that we're not negatively impacting something like the senior center as well. The Village Hall, that, you know, you hate to say it, but we are busting at the seams there as well. But I think we can get creative with our options with that a little bit more than maybe what the senior center needs and what the library needs are. And so I think working with our planner that we hired in 2018 will be a way that we can, again, get creative, look at options available to us.
Thank you. And then last but not least, but Jerry, I will reread the question for you. The pandemic has posed major financial hurdles for some of the village's community projects, including the new library, which had to postpone its fundraising deadline by several months. What are some of the ways to ensure that the library gets built, as well as eventually a new senior center and Village Hall?
Thanks. Well, first of all, I'm going to say that the library will get built. We do, you know, everything you've heard so far about the library is true. Randy and Jenna are spot on with their assessments. I've got a little bit different view, only because I grew up in Oregon. When I was in elementary school, the street side of the Village Hall was the library. It was a much smaller circulation at that point, obviously. And when I say the 50s, I mean the 1950s, not the 1850s. And I say it's an important part of the community because I used to go down there, and at that time, I lived out on a dairy farm, and every Wednesday I'd go down and get 7 books, and we didn't have TV, so I'd read a book every night. And it helped my education immensely. When I look forward to the library, I'm reminded by my financial training that we've already given them $6 million. And we've also given them a lot that we paid almost $1 million for. So the village residents have already made a $7 million investment in a new library. But what I'm hearing is that is not going to be enough to get a library that Oregon should have. However, it's going to be interesting going forward because we have to have a new senior center. I'm dug in on that. And we need a new Village Hall. I don't know how much longer we can wait on that. But I know we're going to be discussing that in the very near future. We're going to be meeting with the library board in February.
That is time.
And I thank you. The outcome of that will determine how big the library will be. Thank you.
I would like to open a potential rebuttal to anyone who is interested. You have 1 minute.
Kimberly, is that okay? So yep. just 2 points. The $2 million that we have raised, public has raised, is the most that we have ever raised in this community for a project. And then the second thing is that we just want to make sure we don't make the same mistake that we did when we built opened the first library. It was too small from the day we opened it up. And we don't need to make that mistake again with the new library. Thanks.
I'd like to offer anyone else a chance for rebuttal if they would like it. If not, we will move on. We have a few questions submitted from audience members. How it will work is some of the questions are directed towards specific people. However, once that person is done answering, everyone will have an opportunity to answer. So the first one comes from an email. It is about the Fire and EMS Commission, and we will start with Randy. The question is as follows. Many area communities have upgraded their terrific volunteer EMTs to on-site, fully staffed, paid paramedics. While the Oregon Area Fire and EMS is not governed exclusively by the village and has already made some steps in this direction, Would this be a priority for your administration?
First of all, I want to say, as the chair of the fire, we have the most terrific firefighters and EMS workers that you can imagine. We are so lucky that if someone calls, they come and they take care of, and the chief is the best. And it's going to be a sad day when he is gone. But I think to answer the question, I think if I remember the question right, yes, I think we have to sort of go to more of that. And I think if that's going to help us to keep our district residents safe, then I think that's a direction. I think we're open just to keep that priority, that we want to make sure that all residents get the care and the services that they need. And so we may have to go more in that direction, I think. But we have the best, and the chief is terrific. Thanks.
Thank you. We will then go to Jerry next, and I will read the question for you. If you just to give our timekeeper a second to fix.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Okay.
Yep, many area communities have upgraded their terrific volunteer EMTs to on-site fully paid staffed paramedics. While the Oregon Area Fire and EMS is not governed exclusively by the village and has already made some steps in this direction, would this be a priority for your administration?
Thank you. I'd have to learn more before I could answer that. I would agree that we've got a very good fire and EMS staff right now, and it's headed up by a very good administrator, Chief Glenn. And before I committed to do more hours, I think that's what we're asking for here, is more daytime staff, if I understand the question. I think I'd have to look at economies of scale, like possibly combining with Brooklyn, combining with possibly Fitchburg, or another force, to see if we can gain some economies of scale by doing that. But I can't, again, as Randy indicated, I can't say enough good about not only our fire and EMS staff, but our entire village staff. Because we're fortunate that we have such excellent employees in all our departments. I yield at this time.
Thank you. And then Jenna, I will reread the question for you. Many area communities have upgraded from their terrific volunteer EMTs to on-site fully staffed paid paramedics. While the Oregon Area Fire and EMS is not governed exclusively by the village and has already made some steps in this direction, would this be a priority for your administration?
So the way I understand it, that's kind of two questions. One, we need to be upgraded to be paramedics, our paramedic operation. A lot of our EMT ambulance staff are paramedics, but because our operation isn't certified in that way, they don't operate as a paramedic when they're working here. So I think that we absolutely need to be taking steps to encourage the district to look at making those improvements so that we can be certified for paramedics. We know our staff has the skills, even the ones who aren't licensed as paramedics. A lot of them are interested in moving forward with their skills. So we have talented staff who can do the work. We just need to do this other side of it. And I think we can. And I think the district needs to have those conversations. Obviously, it's not just the village that makes that decision, but we need to be talking about it. And as far as having full staff paramedics on, again, I think that is something that the district needs to be having conversations about. We're growing, like the village is growing like gangbusters. There's developments going in the towns in which we partner with. So even though calls over 2020 has been pretty steady compared to 2019, I don't know that we can expect that to be a continuing trend with how we're growing. So it's definitely conversations we need to have. It's definitely something we need to be working towards in the future. Whether that would happen in my administration, we can work towards it, but unfortunately, since it's not just the village's decision, I'd say we got to keep talking about it and keep working on it.
Thank you. I'd like to open the opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal for anyone who would like to offer one. I'm going to take that as a no. We will move to our next question then. This one comes from a Facebook viewer. Jenna will start based on our existing order. The question is as follows. As the urgency of addressing climate change becomes increasingly clear, do you have any plans for sustainability and increased use of renewable energy, such as electric vehicles or green buildings for our village?
Yeah, so that is one of the reasons why I think the village needs to reevaluate its level of investment in the library project, because at the current level of investment we have, and then with the dollars that we fundraised, that's the building, but it's not including some of these features that I think we really need to be incorporating in our community. I mean, we've had water issues, and we've been talking in that particular site, how can that building enhance some of the water issues for that area? But we also don't want to make it worse by relying on fossil fuels for our energy. If we can get some solar panels in there, if we can do potentially some geothermal, but all of that is an investment in our in the library, an investment in our future. And so that's why I say we need to reevaluate what we're doing there and for our investment. And I think that also goes to the senior center, village hall, any building that we take on, we have to be building it or designing it with sustainability in mind, because we know things are changing. And we hear about that with the flooding issues we've been talking about recently with the Badfish Creek area, and over on across Netherwood, the water from Lake Barney that's coming down. So I think the other thing we have to do is we have to work with the neighboring municipalities, because we know that the things that happen in Oregon will help, but we're dealing with water coming from other municipalities, and we're sending water to other municipalities. So we need to be working with our neighbors to make sure that when we're doing different developments, when we're looking at making changes, that we're taking a holistic view, so that we're the impact is doing what we expect it to do, and we're not just pushing a problem down the creek, if you will.
Thank you. Randy, you are next, and I will repeat the question for you.
Okay.
As the urgency of addressing climate change becomes increasingly clear, do you have any plans for sustainability and increased use of renewable energy, such as electric vehicles or green buildings for our village?
So the library has been mentioned, and the sustainability and the geothermal and things of that nature have come up, and I am 100% behind those sorts of things in electric cars. The only thing that I would say is I just want to make sure, can we afford to go in that direction? Because especially like the library, we're on a tight budget, but I see the value in it. But can we afford it? And so what I would look at is, this is where sort of it comes back to that the public-private partnerships, like solar. Can we work with a company that maybe gives us some good in-kind help with the library to put solar? But I'm 100%. I love to see electric cars. And to be honest, I mean, we have to sort of think about it. Is it in the long run, is it going to pay for itself? And if the answer is yes, then it's worth sort of going down that avenue. We're actually saving the village money. So I guess that's how I would answer that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I will ask the question one more time for Jerry. As the urgency of addressing climate change becomes increasingly clear, do you have any plans for sustainability and increased use of renewable energy, such as electric vehicles or green buildings for our village?
Thank you. I would assume that any time we build a new building in the village going forward, I would assume that the village board would insist that we explore green energy in the form of solar, in the form of electric power. And I think, but I think as far as vehicles go, I think that only works well when you have a fleet, at least initially. But I think the best thing we could do is use solar panels on our new buildings. And since Randy and Jenna have explored that extensively during their time, I'll yield at this time.
Thank you. I will offer a 1-minute rebuttal to anyone who would like to use it.
I'll just, Kimberly, I'll just say one thing that talked about the expense of this, but there are a lot of grant programs out there that I think that we should explore, and maybe we get some help on some of these costs, because I think we would be foolish to not even consider them. I think in the long run, they would benefit us. I think there are a lot of grant programs and things that we should look at as a possibility. I don't think we should just dismiss them, outright without doing a little bit of research. Thanks.
Would anybody else like a 1-minute rebuttal period? Otherwise, we'll move on to our next viewer question. The next question is also from Facebook Live, and it comes from a Town of Rutland resident. We will start with Jerry for this question. The question is as follows. The village has several services that are shared with the neighboring towns, including senior services and the library. How will neighboring towns be included in this decision-making, and how important is it to get their buy-in?
I think the neighboring towns will be included on the senior center board. I mean, every year there is a joint meeting of all the organizations that contribute to the senior center. And during that time, they bring forth their budgets, we examine the budgets, any questions are entertained and answered at that time. And actually all year long, if they have a question, they can approach the senior center director, who will bring it forward. So how will the input will be continued as it always has been. And if you're unsure whether if you're not sure that there was input, I think if you just reach out to the senior center and find out who is what board you're on. Well, you said Rutland, right? So yeah, and I can't think of the name of the Rutland township. So I checked with the township and asked the township about that. Who meets with the senior center director and discusses things like that. But no, everybody that's involved in the senior center now will continue to be. No one will be rejected from the senior center. Thank you.
Thank you. We will then take the question to Jenna. I will repeat it for you. The village has several services that are shared with neighboring towns, including senior services and the library. How will neighboring towns be included in this decision-making, and how important is it to get their buy-in?
I think it's extremely important to get in the buy-in of all the stakeholders when we're looking at joint projects. And I know we do have an annual meeting with the towns that we talk about the different shared services that we have, the senior center, the fire EMS commission. But I think when we're looking at some of these projects that are more impactful, we need to have more conversations, more communication about what each municipality is at, where they can contribute, what they think the needs are. We can't just make this in a vacuum. And I think that's where the role of the village president and the new administrator really come into play, because I think that's part of from my perspective, that's part of the expectation is that they're meeting with the chair of the town of Oregon and the town of Rutland and the town of Dunn and having those conversations. Is one meeting enough? Is one joint meeting enough to have these conversations? What do we need to make sure that we're getting all the stakeholders buy-in, and not just from our opinion, but listening to what they have to say as well, and making sure that we're adapting and that everybody's coming together behind this project. So I think that that's crucial. And I think that it's highly important that the village president and the new village administrator work with our neighboring municipalities to make sure that these shared services continue to be the shining lights that they are currently for our community.
Thank you. And then last but not least, but Randy, and I'll repeat the question for you quickly. The village has several services that are shared with the neighboring towns, including senior services and the library. How will neighboring towns be included in this decision-making, and how important is it to get their buy-in?
So these neighboring towns, they're our partners in the senior center. We have yearly contracts that they contribute from their budgets to help the senior center operate. I am positive that there will be a comprehensive survey done, and I bet it goes to every senior that walks through that senior center door to find out what do they feel are the needs of the senior center and their needs. So as the village president, I would make sure that happens, and knowing Rachel, the director, I'm sure that is the plan. I can't imagine her going forward without including as many people, seniors and townships as possible to get their input. I mean, since they're our partners, they're helping pay for the services that their seniors get. And if you go in there, this is pre-COVID, but the senior center is hopping all the time. You go in, it's a wonderful place, lots of activity, folks from all the communities, and they do wonderful work too. And Rachel is a great director. So I'm sure that everybody who wants to give some input will have the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. I will offer a 1-minute rebuttal period to anyone who's interested. Seeing no one, we will finish off with our last submitted question. I will give it to Randy first. The question is as follows. We had a question on Facebook about Keller Alpine Park, which is still undeveloped, but still has gotten recreational use from citizens. In light of recent flooding issues, would you consider developing it into a prairie or some other form of natural development or conservancy?
So I was on the Zoom call when this was discussed with the Plan Commission, and I heard the residents state their feelings about keeping it natural. And we presented some preliminary plans of what possibly could go on there. And the Village Hall was actually one of them, and some soccer fields. I understand, because next door has been used so heavily by lots of folks, the natural area. It's a wonderful area. I could see it. But Mike Grace made I think a valid point that we have to look at, is that we're getting landlocked downtown. There is no open space, very little open space downtown, and so we have to sort of look at all the competing options of what to go there. I get where people want it to be sort of natural, and I can see it. I mean, we're just going to have to see what are the village's needs for that space, and maybe there's a compromise. Maybe there's a little bit of both. We can still do some natural parts of it, but we'll have to see. I mean, housing's been talked about being there, or a satellite fire station. I just think we're going to have to. But I think we can work this. We can work this out. We can figure out a solution, hopefully, that makes everybody happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenna, you are next, and I will reread the question for you. We had a question on Facebook about Keller Alpine Park, which is still undeveloped, but has still gotten recreational use from citizens. In light of recent flooding issues, would you consider developing it into a prairie or some other form of natural development or conservancy?
Keller Alpine Park is something that means a lot to me. My family we live nearby, and we go walking through there quite a bit. I think this is one of those times where we need to look at having some collaboration and some communication with the interested groups. I know we've talked pretty frequently and openly. The conceptual plan had it as being playing fields in that area. And then at the Planning Commission meeting that we were at recently, we had received, before that we'd received emails, and then people spoke also to a desire to have this restored to prairie and having a more natural environment for people to enjoy. And I think this is where we need to get these interested groups together and talk more about what's possible, have our planner there so we can look at, we have the conceptual design that was presented at that Plan Commission meeting, but if we're hearing what the community's needs are, what needs to change there? What needs, where can we get creative to fulfill some of these desires from all of the groups that are interested in this land? Because, Randy made a good point. Yes, the fires, we're going to need more space for our fire station. We're looking for a place for Village Hall. I know I've talked about potentially putting affordable housing in that space. So I think this is really where the community comes together and we collaborate on what is the vision for this space and then proceed. But that takes a while, and it's, it's labor intensive. That's a lot of meetings, but I think it's worth it. I think the village would be happier with the end product after having those community conversations.
Thank you. And then Jerry, last but not least, and I will hopefully read this question right 1 out of 3 times. So we had a question on Facebook about Keller Alpine Park, which is still undeveloped, but has gotten recreational use from citizens. In light of recent flooding issues, would you consider developing it into prairie or some other form of natural development or conservancy?
My colleagues have covered that quite well, but I will say that I think that we're still in the planning stages of that. I think we need to collaborate with the rest of the community and find out what some other uses might be. I know the county has some great experts that they use out at Anderson Park from time to time when they're doing their planning out there. Perhaps we could convince one of those folks to come and look at that site for a suggestion also. But I think that's a valuable, well-used space by a lot of people. I know I use it a lot myself. And I think, we need to just proceed cautiously and do the right thing there and try and satisfy as many of the community demands as we possibly can when we're planning that and executing that plan. Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to open it for a 1-minute rebuttal period if anyone would like it. Randy, go ahead.
I just want to say one comment. I think we preliminary plans were shown.
I'm so sorry.
I just think we need to have some more discussion with interested groups. And I always like, how can we make this work? Can we find an acceptable compromise that satisfies maybe most people? Sometimes you can't satisfy everybody, but can we find some kind of compromise is what I would say. Thanks.
Thank you. I do want to apologize. That is what happens when you forget to mute one of your computers. I am so sorry. I thought I had covered everything. I would like to offer a rebuttal period for anyone else who would like it. Seeing no one, we will move to closing statements. Basically, we'll have a closing statement as to why you feel that the public should vote for you, and we will start with Jerry.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I got experience. I've got a wealth of experience behind me. Again, 19 years of experience on the village board. I'm very competent in the what each committee does and the employees and the systems that the county has. I've been here, like I said, 19 years because I feel Oregon offers an excellent quality of life, and I feel I can do more to maintain that excellent quality of life. And I'm reminded at this time that, you know, democracy is not a spectator sport. Those of you that have been watching this telecast have obviously embraced one of the candidates by now. And so I would ask you to take the final step and act on that embrace and vote. Because again, it's not a spectator sport. You need to get out, you need to vote. You can vote absentee at the mailbox outside the village hall. You'll have to call down there and have them send you a ballot, or you can go down there at election day. But if you do nothing else, please vote for the candidate of your choice. Thanks.
Thank you. Jenna, you are next with your closing statement.
Right. So once again, I just want to say thank you to OCA Media and the Oregon Observer for putting this on. And thank you, Kimberly, for moderating. It's been a pleasure to talk with you all today about my vision for Oregon. I'm really excited for the future. As I mentioned in my opening statement, it's bright, it's vibrant. And I think that with the experience that I've received over the last few years on the board and the increasing levels of responsibility and leadership that I've demonstrated on the board, that I am ready to take us into the next phase, whether that can be with our affordable housing projects, as I mentioned, sustainable growth as we look to how the village is going to grow in the future and how we're going to build in the future, both with municipal buildings and the ask that we're going to ask of the developers who want to partner and move into our village. So I'm really excited about that. And I think that we have so much going on, so much potential here that is still being realized. And I think that moving forward, having strong leadership, having collaborative leadership, somebody who's willing to have the tough conversations and the less tough conversations with those who want to make sure that their voice is heard is important. And I think having somebody who keeps diversity in mind as we're going through this is also important. So again, my name is Jenna Jacobson. I ask for your vote on November 16th, and thank you for the time here.
Thank you. And then last but not least, Randy, your closing statement. Hope you're on mute.
How's that?
Much
okay,
better.
So I want to direct my closing statement to all the Village of Oregon voters. My message is simple. I'm running for village president to continue the work that I've done in the village for the past 8 years. I mean, overall, I have 33 years of community involvement experience. 8 of those have been right here in the village. It started with me being in the United States Navy for 8 years, continued 17 years as president of my neighborhood association. Over the past 8 years, I've been involved in the pump house, the Tin Man, building of the food pantry, and construction of a $1 million youth center, and then most recently the co-chair of the new library campaign. I'm also helping with the renovation of JC Park. These projects have saved over taxpayers $4.1 million. Many of the projects were done while I was a village trustee. I believe that I've proven that I know how to get things done, that I have the trust of village residents, and I have the ability to be one heck of a village president. And I'd like to end just with an example of the trust that I think that I built with village residents. In the past projects, such as the library or the food pantry, my local donors gave me, because I asked them, $550,000 for the food pantry. Some of the same donors for the youth center gave me $800,000 for that new building. And just recently for the new library, my donors gave me, because I asked them, $1 million, because I think they believe in my ability to work with others and work hard and to bring these projects to fruition. And in my bid as village president, I'm very honored to have the endorsement of village president Jeannie Carpenter and past president Steve Staten. So I ask for your vote on February 16th and April 6th. And I ask for the opportunity to be your next village president. Thank you.
Thank you all. There will be no rebuttal period after this. I am sorry. Thank you all for tuning into this candidate forum. Please remember to vote in the February 16th primary, as well as the April 6th spring election. Residents can check their voter registration status on the State Election Commission's website at myvote.wi.gov. Residents will also be able to use the myvote.wi.gov website to request absentee ballots for the duration of 2021, look up their polling location, or update their address. We here at The Observer and OCA Media wish you all a pleasant evening. And again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Good night.